Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP. John Paz with me today. Very special guest, lead producer, and the co-book writer of The Last Match, a pro wrestling rock musical. He's, of course, Jeremiah James. Jeremiah, welcome to the two-man power
Hey,
trip. How you doing?
it's so good, man. Thank you so much for having me on. Excited to be here.
What is going on in your world? What's the latest on The Last Match?
Man, I have to tell you, in our business, when you're building out a show or a rock concert or something like that, you feel like you've got a good handle on, your concept and all these sort of things, and that you got your finger on the pulse of your fan base. And this show has exceeded our. I'd be a liar if I told you that we expected it to blow up to the point that it has. So, it's been an incredible ride so far. We've got two performances that are encore performances. We sold out Jersey City's White Eagle Hall back on September the 26th. We were invited to come back to do two more performances before we take the show to its next place. And it'll more than likely sell out again. It's been humbling, man, to see the fans come and to see how they're enjoying the piece has been a wild ride.
Yeah, that is awesome. Obviously, coming up on Monday on the
Yeah,
14th again, White
yeah,
Eagle Hall, Jersey City, 2:30 and 7:30. So,
yeah,
obviously they're happy with you over there.
yeah, very much so. And we're just thrilled to be there. It's such an incredible venue. The people over at Prudential and the people who run the venue have been awesome and taking great care of us. And it's been just an unbelievable blast from beginning to end. We have an incredible company of actors and wrestlers. And to present this never before tried, merging of two worlds on this level has been just, it's so much fun. That's all I can really say.
Yeah, who came up with the idea? Who thought of the idea? Let's combine wrestling with the musical and, and rock and just make this thing explode. Who thought of it?
So it was my concept. So I've been a diehard wrestling fan since the '80s when I was a kid. The Saturday Night Main Event, all of that. The colorful world of 1980s wrestling, and I followed wrestling my whole life. And as I was in the theater business and became a producer, this has been bouncing around in my head for about 7 years. And then finally, about 3 years ago, I said, I think I know what I want this to be, and I decided to pull the trigger. I reached out to Jason Husa, who was my writing partner in another show, and I said, "Hey, man, I've got this concept. It's a fully immersive wrestling show. I want you to write the script with me." Because he's just an incredible writer, and he does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to the writing. I come in and I go, "I'm going to cut that and write this," and
Right, right.
but he's the brilliance behind a lot of what is in that script. And then we needed a composer, and I had recently, at the time, met this rocker named Sylvana Joyce, who has a band called Sylvana Joyce in the Moment. And I was like, man, I want her to write. If she can write the music to this, that would be amazing. And so I pitched it to her. She said yes. Her husband came on board to be, a co-composer, and Jason, also the book writer, did lyrics, and then Sylvana did some lyrics for some songs with her husband. So it's been a merging of these two worlds that so many people, to be perfectly honest, said that it couldn't be done. It would never work on the level that we were trying to do. And so it's been an incredible journey to see it come to life, and not only see that it works, but blows any expectation out of the water.
I feel like you don't necessarily know if it's going to work, and then all of a sudden it works. You're like, oh, how did somebody else not think of this? This is such a good idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And we're just honored that the fan base was behind us, because that this is a wrestling show that is written by wrestling fans for wrestling fans specifically, and theater fans as well, who have never maybe been to wrestling or known of wrestling. Because theater fans are used to kind of, you go to your show, you sit there, you wait for your nice moment to clap. And we know the wrestling fans, that's not the deal.
Yeah.
They are coming in. Wrestling fan base is as much a part of any wrestling show as the wrestlers themselves. And, we even had to warn some of the theater actors who are used to that world, hey, you're going to be heckled. These people are coming. This is a wrestling event that happens to be told through musical. So, it's going to be a different feel. And, and they were just floored. And then it became exactly what we hoped it would be, where the fans helped drive the pace of the show and the fun of the show, and it became fully interactive in the way that we'd always hoped. So it's been wild. So that's how it kind of all came together. And it's one of those things. Again, you go, you hope it's going to work, and then it's like another galaxy, and then the same thing. People go, man, how hasn't anybody else done this yet?
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm like, oh my god, this should have came around way sooner. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, this is great. What a
yeah,
great idea. What a good melding, or melting, if you will, of
yeah,
worlds.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing, people. So there have been other, because I want to be very transparent. There have been other shows based around wrestling. There's a play that almost won the Pulitzer Prize. I want to say about 10, 15 years ago. That is a brilliant play, but it is actors pretending to be wrestlers, and it tells a wonderful story in a different way. But it is not a wrestling event. It is a play that happens to use wrestling as part of its storytelling, and it's beautiful. There have been a couple other wrestling musicals that work as traditional musicals that, tell a story about wrestling and they work in some wrestling stuff. The difference between our show and anything else that's ever been done is it is a wrestling event. It is a pro wrestling event that just so happens to be, like I said before, be told as a musical. This is not stage performance combat. This is real pro wrestling. All these actors have gone through intense pro wrestling training. They are learning the art of pro wrestling. And then the pro wrestlers that we have attached to the show had to go through and work on acting and prepping to help tell the story. And it's built to literally be no different than any other wrestling event you've ever been to. So when wrestling fans walk through the door, they know this is their world. They understand that this is not, this is an homage to the world of pro wrestling from one fan to another as I talk to you. So it's as if you were to take Monday Night Raw, strip out a bunch of other title storylines, right? And just do one continuous narrative and then tell it through some awesome real rock music, not theater rock, real rock music. And that's what our show is designed to be. So it is literally a pro wrestling event first with real pro wrestling that happens to tell a story.
Love it. And how do you get the wrestlers involved? Obviously, Paul James, Matt Cardona. How'd you get the pro wrestlers involved?
Again, I can't take credit. It was I made one phone call, and I had followed this store in New Jersey, and it was called the Wrestling Collector. And I followed this. I just like their Instagram posts, and and all the stuff that you follow as wrestling fans in general. Like I followed like 80s wrestling, 80s wrestling con, which all ended up being one guy in the area of New Jersey, and then all these other different wrestling Instagram pages that I followed. But I said, he's only like an hour away. Let me call the person who owns this store and just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. I've never worked in the wrestling world before. I see you have your own promotion. And I literally sent him an email first and did a follow-up call right away. And 10 minutes later, Tommy Fierro called me right back and he goes, he said, explain to me what this is. And so I give him a little bit of a lowdown of what the plan is. He goes, I don't need to know anything else. I'm in. What do you need from me? How do we do this? And it was really Tommy who had the belief in me and belief in the project and the vision to say, I see that this could be something that wrestling fans would enjoy. And then he started saying, I need to connect you to this person. We need to talk to this person. And then, here comes Bull James, Alpha Jr., who were incredible trainers to train our actors to, really become in depth in the world of pro wrestling, and they've been incredible. And so it was really Tommy Furio who made all of that happen. And then from there, we started gaining a following of people who were interested in what we were doing. And the gentleman at World Wrestling Flashbacks contacted us on Instagram and they started saying, hey, we would love to be involved, how can we help, and connected us to a few other people, and one of them being Matt Cardona. Said, hey, we can connect you to Matt Cardona, who literally parts of this role that he plays were based around him as
Wow.
Matt Cardona, being fans all the way back to Zack Ryder days. I'm like, are you serious? You can get me in touch with Matt Cardona? And they're like, yeah, let's see if we can't connect you. And Matt and myself and my producing partner Rachel, we had several conversations back and forth, and he was like, a musical, I don't know, yeah,
Yeah.
but I said, you know, we worked really hard at trying to show him that we really felt that this could open up not only a whole new set of fans to him, but also to the wrestling industry as a whole. You know, there are a lot of people out there that always flirt with wrestling. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or they were like, I watched it when I was a kid, but then they got older. And you all know, man, like the people that look down their nose at wrestling like it's some lowbrow thing, and it always drives me crazy. And I was like, look, these people are out there. They just need the gateway to come to this world and see it for what it is.
Right.
Wrestling is its own art form. It is beautiful and powerful in its storytelling. We have deep wells of knowledge and history. And I always explain to non-wrestling fans, I'm like, you know what we akin wrestling to? It's like your old grandma who used to watch, you know, her serials or, you know, the soap operas on TV. And she can tell you every single character on that show, how long they were on that show, when they were bad, when they were good, when they
Yep.
died and went to a desert island and came back. You know, that's what we as wrestling fans love about our industry, to follow characters for 30, 40 years. I mean, and more. And I said, these people, well, when they come in and they see the artistry in this, they'll be fans. They'll be hooked and they'll want to go. And that was the best feedback we could have gotten when we did the sold out shows on the 26th. People who, you know, husband and wives coming to me going, I came here very skeptical. I came because, you know, your star Ramin Karimloo is one of my favorite Broadway guys and international actors in the theater business and in movies. And I got to tell you, I'm now a wrestling fan. I didn't know, but I knew of wrestling, but now I want to go see more wrestling because of this. And so many husbands were like, you know, my wife hates wrestling, I hate the theater, but we could go to something together, and we both had such a blast, you know, because there's something for everybody in it. You might not be the biggest wrestling fan, but you might be a huge fan of a musical. You can come and you're going to get that piece. You might be a fan of rock, but overall, you're going to walk out, and my goal is all the people that walk out have a new understanding of the artistry of wrestling itself, see it for what it truly is, which is its own incredible art form, and have a respect for that business moving forward. And it's been amazing to see the reaction it's gotten.
So tell us a little bit about the story of the last match. Obviously, Ben Vengeance is the star, so to speak. But what's the storyline or the arc? What's going to happen here?
So it's a universal story. You know, when we started writing it, I wasn't sure exactly what the direction was going to be. But then it started to kind of unfold in front of us. You know, there was a lot going on in the WWE at the time, and a lot in AEW, and different scenarios and different wrestlers. And Ben Vengeance is kind of a compilation of many famous old wrestlers that we've known, you know, like the Bruno Sammartinos, the Undertakers, the Ric Flairs, the people that had huge longevity and impact in the business, right? But he's akin to certain parts of Taker being, you know, a backstage leader, you know what I mean, and imparting wisdom to young people. And it really is the story of uh, basically at the end of the day, if you could no longer be the person you've always identified yourself to be, and it was taken from you, or your bell was rung and it was your time to retire, and you could no longer identify as that person, whether you're a school teacher, a police officer, a firefighter, what have you, right? And you've been that for 30 years, all of a sudden you blink your eye and it's over. Well, who are you then? And is that person going to be enough as you go into the next phase of your life? You know?
Hmm.
And that's really what this story is. And it's somebody who is, you know, come to the end of the road. He's facing down his last match. He has to drop the title on his last match to somebody who's a, you know, third generation wrestler, doesn't respect the business, just wants his payday, wants the accolades, but doesn't want to do the work to gain the respect of the locker room. And he's got to go out on his back to somebody who doesn't deserve him getting him over, you know? And it's a really hard thing. It's like when you think about it, it's like if you were a cop, it's always that rookie who's coming in to show you up, or you're working a corporate business. There's that young guy who's got the new, fresh ideas and your old hat. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's a hard thing that every one of us, man or woman, have to face in our lives, period. And that's really what this story is about. Ben Vengeance is married to a young female wrestler who is trying to fight her way to the top of the female division and more. And, basically, where there are a lot of wrestling tropes in this story, and is Jenny going to do what the boss who runs the promotion wants her to do, which is possibly screw over her husband in the last match to get over for her and get over for this other character and, be this like kind of evil, you know, team into the next phase of the business, kind of thinking about how the 80s came to an end, the 90s took over, how the 90s kind of led into the Attitude Era and it became a new generation of wrestlers and that's really it. I don't want to give away the rest, but
Right.
it's a wrestling story that is universal to all of us, but even more than that, it is a true to life diehard wrestling story that any wrestling fan will either know pieces of or understand and be able to follow that journey. And it all takes place mostly in the backstage, but this show will never be in a theater. So it's just a wrestling ring, it's just a platform, the lighting setup, everything is the same as a wrestling event. We just tell the story in and around the ring and guide you guys on the story of, what it means to come to the end of the road.
That's different too. You got the ring out there. I mean, that's pretty damn cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, when I was developing the show with my team, there was a lot of people when we would tell them about it, they were like, I don't understand how that'll work. Rocky tried to do it on Broadway and it didn't go well, right? Because you got a wrestling ring, you got to tell that story. It has to be told a very specific way. And they spent millions of dollars to have this ring that like lifted up and all this other stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do any of that. I want wrestling fans to walk into an arena just like any other arena. This will never be done in a proscenium theater in Broadway style setups. This is a wrestling event. More than anything else, it's a wrestling event. And I wanted to make sure that the wrestling fans knew when you walk into our arena, you are walking into a world you know and understand, full stop. You don't have to worry that you're going to see a Phantom of the Opera or this, and all those things are great. I'm not putting them down. I've worked in this business a long time. I love the Phantom of the Opera. I love all these shows. But as a wrestling fan, I don't want to walk in to a Broadway style show that is theaterizing wrestling.
Right.
Does that make sense? I want
Yep.
to go see if you're gonna take me, somebody who is a diehard lifelong fan, and as much as I love my industry, I don't want to go in and hear some theaterized version of wrestling in a theater that I'm not comfortable in a space that I don't know, trying to tell me how I should feel about an industry I already love. So it was really important to me that that is how the show was always presented. So when the show goes out on the road or wherever you may see it, it will only ever be an arena. It will never be in a Broadway show or a theater setup.
Man, that's different, but that's so cool. Obviously, for a wrestling fan too, because I saw pictures of it. I saw Mickey James, everybody else is there. I'm like, wait a second, it's happening, in and around the ring. I was like, that's just so different, and really, I mean, it separates you from obviously every other show out there.
Oh, thanks, man. It, it it's just basically the love of the business. Like I wanted to do something that was for the love of the business. Period. And that the wrestling business has inspired me my whole life and I wanted to do something that, here's a whole fan base. There's so many things that have been turned into musicals. There's so many movies. There's so many, cartoons and all those things are incredible. And I'm a fan of all of them. I've probably been in most of them as an actor before I became a full-time producer as well as a performer. But if I was going to tell a wrestling show, there was never that was a fan base that had never been spoken to from that place. And to give them the ability to see a musical that's actually a wrestling event that has music in it, um, eh, it was just so exciting to me to say, and look, they could have rejected us. They could have turned around and gone, you don't get it, you know. But I really believe thoroughly in my team, who are all diehard wrestling fans. My composer, the husband, C. Robert Smith. One of his best friends passed away a few years ago, who was an amateur pro wrestler trying to break into the business. And, you know, one of the things that we did in the show was try to honor him and his memory because, again, you're talking about die-hard wrestling fans. His wife was a fan because of her husband's best friend and learned that world. I had been a wrestling fan my whole life. I mean, I met Tony Atlas in an airport once. It was like one of the greatest days of my life. Sit down and be like, "Come on, brother, let me show you my ring." And
Yep.
he's one of the sweetest guys in the biz. And and then my writing partner Jason, who's just brilliant in his own right, was like, "I've loved wrestling my whole life. I can't believe we've never talked about this. Let's do it. I love this idea." So, it's really exciting to be able to bring a show written by such diehard fans to the diehard fan base of wrestling and say, "This is for you guys. This is for you." And then anybody else who may know theater and may want to see theater will come and see it. Guaranteed you're going to walk out. I defy these people to come to us and say you didn't have a good time and you don't now understand why we have the passion for wrestling that we do as fans.
I love it. You're laying down the challenge, the ultimate challenge, if you will. You're
Big
laying it
time.
out there. Yeah.
Big time. I truly, and I say this to all your fans out there, come November the 14th, if you're a wrestling fan who's skeptical of what we're delivering on, I defy you to come to us and say you didn't enjoy yourself. And I say the same thing to theater fans. If you're sitting there, you're thinking, putting your nose up at the air, going, "Oh, wrestling is, you know, lowbrow entertainment and blah, blah, blah," all those stupid tropes that people say. I dare you, come to our show and come up to me and tell me you didn't have fun and you don't now see the beauty and the power and the excitement of what wrestling is, and that you don't walk out a fan of that industry moving forward. Because I'm telling you, I mean, you're going to get haters anywhere. Doesn't matter what it is. We had
Yep.
people write, the last show we had some mic problems. Mic problems happen. People, well, the show is cool, but the mics had problem. Well, yeah, that happens
Yep.
in live performances. Happens in the
Absolutely.
WWE. Things go wrong. It happens in AEW. We all remember when AEW started. They struggled a couple times. Do we all remember when that ring was supposed to blow up? And it was like,
Yes. Yep.
so, things go wrong. But I defy people to come and tell me they don't come and see the last match of Pro Wrestling Rock Show and not have a good time and say, "Hey, we spoke to the industry, we cared about our fan base, and we wanted to deliver something to you," and that you don't come out of it saying, "That was a blast. I'd do that again."
Rewinding back though, what made you fall in love with wrestling to begin with? I know you said 80s and you're watching those, but what made you like turn on? Like, oh, I love this stuff.
Oh, man. So I used to go to a buddy's house. His name was Rich Lau. Now, ironically, I have wrestling in my family bloodline. My great grandfather, according to my father, was a great uncle or one of the two. I can never remember, but he apparently ran a wrestling ring way back in like the early 1900s. When they would like bring bears and chain them to the ring and all the wild things that used to happen way back in the old wild west of wrestling. Um, and I remember my dad telling me that story, but my dad, funny enough, wouldn't let me watch wrestling in at home. Like I just wasn't allowed. I don't know if he didn't. And to this day, he goes, "I don't remember that." But I'm like, "No, man, you didn't let me." And then when my Boy Scout troop or Cub Scout troop went to go see a wrestling event for my buddy's birthday, my dad didn't let me go. Andre was going to be there, and all these major '80s stars, and I wasn't allowed to go. So I used to spend the night all the time at my buddy Rich's house so we could get up in the morning and watch Saturday morning wrestling and all the rock and wrestling years. And
Yeah.
then that was the era of Up Comes the Ultimate Warrior and all that larger than life colorful aspects of what the 80s wrestling was. And I just fell in love with it. I mean, it was like watching real life superheroes. You know what I mean? Like when you remember when Warrior would come to the ring, I mean, he was a maniac. Like you were like, this guy's crazy, and in the best of ways, and like it just filled you with such excitement. And that's the thing with wrestling that always has carried me through as a fan is it brings in this childlike wonder that no other type of entertainment does. To this, even when you're a grown up, man, like it makes you it gives you that sensation of being a little kid and being lost in the moment.
Yep.
Unlike sports the regular sports like a football game. I'm a huge Buffalo Bills fan. Clearly, I love sports. Sports is very tribal. Like you're a Buffalo fan, you go to the Jets game and everybody's yelling and swearing at each other, and
Yep.
it's a mess, right? But you can, and I tell people all the time, you can go to any wrestling event anywhere in the world. Doesn't matter if you're a fan of the WWE or AEW or ISPW or any one of these smaller independent promotions. If you show up, people are there in luchador masks. People are there in their title belts. It doesn't matter. Black, white, gay, straight, tall, small, old. None of it matters. You a wrestling fan? I'm a wrestling fan. Who do you like? Who do I like? I like. Who do you like? It is a universal love. You are instantly embraced, and it's just one of the coolest things you could ever experience. Because it doesn't matter if you don't like Dolph Ziggler, nobody cares. Like, it's like, I love Dolph Ziggler. I think he's one of the best workers in the entire business, right? But a lot of people aren't fans of Dolph. That's okay. You still like wrestling? I still like wrestling. And you can just continue on. And that is what, I've always loved about it. And the truth of the matter is, from a kid on, after being told I couldn't watch it, then getting old enough to being allowed to watch it, and then watching the transition into from PG to, the Attitude Era when I was in my late teens, and then into more of the PG era. And I think it's a blast. And I've never, we could sit down and talk to any wrestling fan, and you can talk about when you started loving it, what was the match you remember the most? Like anybody, what was your favorite match? Easy. Hulk Hogan and The Warrior, WrestleMania 6, every time. And when you think about it as a grown up, you're like, wasn't even that great a match when it comes to like, both of those guys were limited in offense and, you know, but it was two heroes against each other. And we were so split. Like, who are you going for? Who do you want to win? And never knowing who it was going to be. There was no interference. There was no cheating. There was no, it was just good guy versus good guy, title versus title. And you can go to any wrestling fan and go, what's your favorite match? And they'll just be like, bang, 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 and it's part of the joy of the world of wrestling.
Man, it's funny. Like if you're a wrestling fan, it doesn't even matter like what language you speak too. It's like a universal
Mm.
language too. That's the
Universal
crazy thing
language.
about wrestling.
Yes. You know what I found out recently as this show has blown up, and I didn't know this. I mean, I knew India was a big market for wrestling.
Yep.
I did not know. India has over 400 million viewers of wrestling a year. 400 million
Whoa.
views of wrestling, all right? It is the second watched sport in the whole country behind cricket.
Right. Okay.
Like, that's a billion people. That's wild to me. And that's, the thing. You could go to India, not be able to speak the language, and say you love pro wrestling, and they'll be like, oh my God, I love pro wrestling. Wearing a t-shirt, walking down the street, and have somebody point, love your shirt, man. Love that old WrestleMania shirt, or I love that, independent pro wrestling shirt you're wearing. I mean, you don't even have to speak the same language to be able to speak wrestling and show respect to each other in a little bit. You're totally right.
It's so funny. I went down to Disney. Me and my son went down to Disney. I had a couple wrestling shirts on. Like people would acknowledge you. Then way later on, I go to a concert. I'm wearing some sort of wrestling shirt. People acknowledge you. I'm like, it's like no matter where I go, no matter what state I'm in, somebody's always giving you the NWO or like the
Yeah,
thumbs up or like, oh, I love Hulk. Like stuff like
yep.
that. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And I'll tell you, a funny story that I don't know if I've told this on any interview I've done yet, but we did the concert. This show has moved faster than any show I've ever produced. In fact, any show that I've ever been a part of my entire 25-year career in the business. And we had a really amazing, we sold out the Cutting Room in New York City to launch the music and the original, because we have an album out. It's on all the streaming services, concept album with Ramin Karimloo and Amber Ardolino and Matt Cardona. So if you want to hear Matt Cardona singing it too, go and check out the album. But when we launched the first single, we did a concert at the Cutting Room, sold it out. And man, I was busted tired the next day. Like, busted tired, putting the concert together and getting all the performers together. And, we had a wonderful director on that show who was so helpful and put us all together. The next day, I'm walking to my Broadway theater. I'm wiped. and I have this WrestleMania T-shirt on. And as I'm walking, this guy is looking at me, and he's kind of like tilting his head, and he's got like a weird look on his face, and he's kind of like grinning. Big guy too, you know. And I'm like, what is he staring at? You know, New York City. It's weird. People,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, he stops, puts his hand in front of me, goes, "I like that shirt, bro." And I look up. It was Shane McMahon,
Whoa.
bro. Can't make it up. And I went,
Wow.
"Oh man!" I said, "Dude, what a pleasure to meet you." He goes, "I'm Shane." I went, "Come on, man. I know who you are." I was like, "My name's Jeremiah James. It's so nice to meet you." He goes, "Well, really nice to meet you too, bro. I just, wanted to tell you I love that T-shirt, and have a great day." I'm like, "You have a great day too." And my show wasn't in a place that I was gonna like be like, "Hey, let me pitch you," this
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome show. But it was one of those moments where like the universe is like, "You're going in the right direction, brother. Like, keep on, getting that show moving." Like to meet Shane and shake his hand right there on the side the day after we launched this concert and all this music online, man, it was a killer moment, all because I was wearing a wrestling T-shirt.
Yep. It brings you together. Almost maybe a sign from above there. Shane, WrestleMania, this, yeah, right?
Right? I'm telling you,
Yeah.
man, it felt that way. It was. I mean, come on. You're writing we got a show. We just launched the album the night before to a sold out crowd in New York. I'm walking down 52nd Street in between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue, and walking down toward me in a suit with that smirk on his face. And he was smirking because he saw my T-shirt, and I'm a grown man who's 40 years old walking down the street in a wrestling T-shirt. And there's that universal sense of, there you go, buddy,
Yep.
rock and roll, and have it be him. I'm like, yeah, man, we're on the right track here. And, we hope to one day have him see it, because we really feel very strongly that if those, whether it be Tony Khan, Shane, his sister, Hunter, any one of them came to see it, they would understand that this is not anything that these people are doing to, ride on the backs of wrestling fans, that this is for wrestling fans, that it is an homage to that world. And, one of our goals is to start, because the show is built to be fully immersive. You walk into the arena, it's the 1980s. You are transported back into that time. The colors, once we have a full level production, because what we did in Jersey City Theater Center was actually um, a the show, but without the extra pop and pizzazz you would see at an AEW show, with the video walls and video floors and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have any banners or anything like that. It was just the wrestling ring, the
Yep.
story, and wrestlers in costume and the actors in costume as wrestlers and back and forth. So, the future is to build out that fully immersive experience where you're transported back in time. We tell you this story, and that people get a fully immersive experience. So you're not just getting a ticket to go see a Broadway show where you sit in your seat and there's that disconnect. You're part of the show. We want you to yell and shout. We want you to, heckle the performers up there. And then at the same time, our goal is to start a non-for-profit organization for retired pro wrestlers, to bring them in as guests and help give them, because they were their whole careers, they've always been, independent contractors. So we want to give them a chance to have a place where they can come. They don't need to even wrestle. You can just come and be a guest, do signings at the beginning of the show. Say you got, Jake the Snake's out front. You meet Jake. Your ticket gets you in to see Jake, meet Jake, and then sit down and see a wrestling show. And Jake might come into the show as a guest referee or a guest state manager, or a guest, what have you. And the goal is to take care of those folks, as they can no longer wrestle, and give them a place to come be with the boys, and be a part of a whole fully immersive wrestling experience where we take care of them in a way that's never been done in the older aspects of their lives. So we're excited about pulling all these different things together. And it's just because, I mean, come on. One of the craziest things, man, is when my phone goes off and, it's like Bruce Barber Beefcake's like, "Hey, brother, how's the show going?" You're like, what is happening in my life, man? Like, this is surreal. Like, and I don't care, man. I've always been that kind of person. Like, yeah, 100% of a mark, 100%. Like, I love this business. To be able to talk to these guys and gals, man, dude, it's killer.
I love that idea though. Like Jake or Brutus, whoever, like they're signing beforehand because obviously wrestling fans love seeing the legends. So I mean,
That's
that's
right.
awesome too. And I love like giving back. Great idea too. Shows you really love the
Thank you.
business.
Oh man, when I first started doing this, I mean, we have a pool of legends producers, and essentially it's them coming in. They didn't need to invest any money. I said, just come in and be part of this. Like we want to, have like Tito Santana is one of our producing legends. The Axe and Smash of Demolition, such great guys. Mickey James now, and we plan to continue to bring those wrestlers in, and at the same point in time, give them a place to go. It's not just like all these wrestling cons and all these things are awesome. I mean, I buy those tickets. I go to these events, but I
Right.
also
Yeah.
wanted to give them a chance. Like, hey, you don't need. You're 65 years old. You don't need to get in the ring with us. Here, we're going to pay you, and you can just come and have a great time. Meet everybody. You'll make your money doing your signings and all that stuff. But at the same point in time, you can come in and just call a match because it's real pro wrestling in the show. It is not theater. It is a pro wrestling event. So you can call a match. You can be a manager, escort somebody down to the ring. You can. There are all these different things that we've built into the show specifically to take care of the legends as they move forward in their lives.
Love that. Love having them apart. Just curious though, who's like your favorite of all time? Who's your favorite wrestler? Is it Ultimate Warrior? Who's your favorite?
Yeah, man, I can't help. I know I get a lot of flack for it from wrestling fans, but I love the Warrior. I've got like 6 action figures. I've got, I've got a, I've got belts, T-shirts, all the Warrior. Because when I first started watching it, man, he was so larger than life, and I loved Hogan. I mean, who didn't love Hogan in that era? And but there was something just so electric about his entrance, the way he would just squash people. You were like, he's invincible. Like he just seemed invincible to me as a kid. And again, being wrestling fans, as we were talking about earlier, the nostalgia of that. I remember going and buying at 26 years old, 27 years old, the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior because, he had kind of disappeared. It was before the internet could get you any answer you wanted at the drop of a hat. And
Right.
I remember watching that and being like crestfallen, like, no, not my guy, like, not my guy. And then to find out that it was kind of a squash job on him and his career, and, because there was legal battles and all that kind of stuff. So, like, here I am, like 34, 35 years old, and he comes to headline, the Hall of Fame. And I was like, yes, back home where he belongs. People giving him mea culpas, people giving him the credit he deserved. Nobody's saying he's a Shawn Michaels. I just want to make very clear. Like,
Right.
nobody's saying that, from a technical aspect, if I was to say like my tops, it goes Warrior, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and Bret Hart on the same page because the two of them still put on some of the greatest matches in the history of matches. The ground and pound style of Bret to the high flying styles of Shawn were those matches are just incredible to me to this day to watch, and how great Bret was as a tactician. But the Warrior's my favorite from a nostalgia factor. I can't get over it. And then when he was gone, and it was really the Undertaker, I fell in love with the Undertaker. And then watching his journey all the way through the end of his career, those would be my top four.
I love it. It's funny with Warrior. I was such a big Hogan guy. I hated him for years. Well, 2 years really. I hated him for beating Hogan at WrestleMania 6. Then he
Yeah,
beat Savage at WrestleMania 7. So I was like, oh, I hate this guy. But then he
yeah,
saves Hogan at WrestleMania 8. So like, all right, I love this
yeah,
guy again. Yeah, all
yeah,
right.
exactly,
He's forgiven. Yeah.
100%. Man, when that music hit at WrestleMania 8 and he
Oh,
came running out,
awesome.
it was one of the greatest moments as a kid because he had been gone from TV for like a year, and then all of a sudden he's back. And I remember, I don't know if you are of my age bracket, but where I was like in elementary school, like there was then the huge debate because he wasn't as huge as he used to be, and then there was the whole thing of
Yes.
like it's
Oh, yeah.
not the same guy, it's a
Yep.
different
Oh,
guy
yeah.
playing the
Yeah, I'm
Warrior.
40, so we're probably around the same age. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So you go that whole debate back and forth, brother. It's like, no, man, it's a different guy. I'm telling you, like,
Yep.
two camps. No, it's the same guy. I can tell. Look at the tattoos. Nah, they're fake. It's like all of it. And again, that's the joy of even talking about wrestling. It just brings you back to that place of like, yeah, like. And then my one thing I tell people, like, even when I started getting older, you're in your 20s, the nostalgia factor. When Hogan turned into a bad guy at Bash at the Beach '96 was one of the greatest, if not the greatest heel turn in the history of heel turns.
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
remember watching it live and being like, this is not happening. Like, this isn't real. He cut one of the greatest promos of all time by then saying, all those things I did for the kids, to turn around and say I did it for the money that was never true. All the stuff about say your parents take your vitamins. That first line, first thing you got to do, me and Gene, tell everybody here to shut up if you got to hear what I got to say. I was like, oh, I was 16 years old, or 15 years old, whatever it was. And then you skip ahead, I'm like 22, 23, and he's going to wrestle The Rock. And I always pointed that match specifically as the match that really shows how truly intricate the audience is in the storytelling of wrestling. Because here comes Hogan, and you and me are in that same age bracket. It was impossible. We were not going to boo him. It was
Yep.
impossible in that moment. And I won't ever forget when you listen, when you hear JR, and then of course the King starts screaming, "Is he gonna Hulk up, JR?" Yeah, like you were instantly 8 years old.
Yep.
Instantly 8 years old when he started shaking his head and pointing at The Rock, and The Rock was selling like a champ. You literally were like, this is why wrestling is incredible, because here he is, he's close to 50, and there was no way we as fans were going to say boo. No.
Yep.
And they had to change it in the moment because of us. They had to change what was happening in that ring on the fly, whisper to each other. Rock had to become the heel. He had to take the heat because Hogan became a babyface because we said no.
Yep.
Wrestling, man. That's what makes wrestling great.
And the funny thing is, it's like Vince, for whatever reason, thought like, okay, he's definitely going to get booed. Hogan, you could tell, knows he's not going to get booed, and The Rock is like on the fence, like he's like something's in the air here. You could just tell by looking at him, and all of a sudden it switches, and The Rock's like, okay, I have to, I got to be the heel. Okay, here we go. But
Yep.
obviously, great professionalism. But I always laughed to myself, thinking like Hogan knew he wasn't getting booed. Come on, he knew that.
Hogan knew that he was over. I mean, there was no. He came back. Look, people can say what they want about Hogan, all right? And I know there's a lot of, negative stuff out there about him, his backstage antics, and, politicking, whatever. But you cannot deny that that man knows that business. He had his finger on the pulse of that world when he was wrestling. He knew his gimmick. He knew when it needed to change. He knew when things had to be, and there is no doubt in my mind. He knew he was not going to get booed when he walked out there. When he just turned his head and started looking at that audience and got the reaction that the two of them were getting, and the level of baby face that The Rock was, the epitome of baby face at that time, there was no possible way that the nostalgia factor of wrestling was not going to overcome what The Rock had built at that moment in time. All of those women and men who loved Hogan when they were kids, he knew we were not going to accept that he was going to just be a blatant heel like he had been in the WCW with NWO. Like, that was over. You're back in this family now, and all of us fans who grew up with you are now at this age bracket, and we're like, drop the boot. Drop the big leg.
Yes.
Like, we want to see it happen. And I mean, he took those thunderous rock bombs, like, what was it, 3 in a row or whatever it was. And I mean, and he got The Rock, who goes from being a heel in the middle, of the match, to getting him over all over again, and himself. Like, that's a masterstroke, man. Like, that's a masterstroke. It
Yep.
was incredible.
And it's great. My son is 7, so I was watching with him recently. He's a huge fan of The Rock, likes all his movies.
Of
I got a
course.
little Rock figure. I mean, all the stuff with The Rock. But he obviously knows Hulk Hogan. He sees all my Hogan stuff. He sees all the
Yep.
Hogan heat. So he's very familiar with Hulk. Before we've watched WrestleMania 3, and Hulk beats Andre, and he's like, "There's no way he's going to beat this giant." He beats the giant, and he gets a win. So I said, "Hulk never loses," jokingly, of course, but he never loses. So he's thinking that The Rock is going to lose, and all of a sudden, Rock kicks out of the leg drop. He goes, like, then he snapped, and he was like focused. He's like, oh my God. He goes, Rock might actually win this one. And then Rock won. He was like excited as all hell. It's like, I thought Hulk never lost. I'm like, I thought so too. What happened? But it's just funny. The next generation, they're into still into Hogan in their own way because he was excited as hell for the match.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Especially when he's got dad's nostalgia factor and seeing the level of excitement that you have
Yep.
for these characters, building it up in your mind. Like even my wife, man, she is my queen. She is a rock star, former ballerina, Broadway dancer, you name it, and retired now. But she'd never been to a wrestling match before me, and I kept going. I'm telling you, you're gonna love it. You watch something as beautiful as the ballet, right? And you watch the partnering that they do. That's been practiced over and over and over. In wrestling, imagine doing that and never practiced one time. You just talk through it, and then realizing that in that moment the audience is reacting not the way that you had anticipated in these different spots with the lifts in the air and the perfect feet and all that. You've got to change it on the spot.
Yep.
And they got to whisper to each other with thousands of people watching you. That's the artistry of pro wrestling. That's what makes it incredible. She said, we'll see. I took her to SmackDown right before the pandemic. And man, we were in Brooklyn and had like fifth row center seats to the ring. And instantly she starts, like, again, very skeptical, sits down, and then she starts seeing that they're connecting in, like, watching each other and then whispering to each other in the ring. Come on, come on. Like, she goes, they're talking to each other. I see what you're talking about. Da, da, da. And literally 10 minutes in, she's jumping out of her seat. She's like, boo, you're a cheater. Like, it was the funniest thing because she understood at that moment the storytelling, how intricate it was, how incredible you have to be as an athlete and a storyteller to tell that story, all the way up to the nosebleed section and get it across. And she's now a diehard fan and came to see the last match and had so much fun. And so did her dad, my father-in-law, never sat down, like old Navy guy, never was a huge wrestling fan. He said, I couldn't sit. It was I had so much fun. It was so much fun. I'm like, wrestling, man. That's the wrestling
Awesome.
world.
That's wrestling. Absolutely love it. As we wind it down here, though, we'll head towards the finish. Awesome talking
Yeah,
to you about the last match, but give us one last push for the last match.
absolutely. Come and see the last match. We're going to be at White Eagle Hall in Jersey City. Tickets are on sale. Go to lastmatchmusical.com. You can get your tickets there. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok, all of the social medias. Check out all the videos behind the scenes, all the wrestlers and actors training together, prepping for the last match of Pro Wrestling Rock Show. Again, this is a pro wrestling show first that happens to be a musical. And it's a 2:30 performance and a 7:30 performance on Monday, November 14th. These are encore performances, probably going to be sold out by the end of the weekend. So get your tickets now before the show goes and starts its world tour. So come out and see us. See Matt Cardona sing a song with a rock band. The music is awesome. The performances are killer. And, we're honored for all the wrestling fans that trusted in us to do this the last time. And we hope that we continue to, bring a show that was written by wrestling fans for wrestling fans to the fans across the board and bring in new fans around the world. So come and see the last match. We've got our merch on Pro Wrestling Tees. So if you want to get your Pro Wrestling tee from the last match musical, be wearing it in the audience. That'd be awesome. And we'd love to see you there.
Just a little tidbit about the wrestling collector store before I let you go. It's awesome. Obviously, it's in Stockholm, New Jersey. Our buddy Tommy Fierro, co-producer, but he's
100%.
owner of the store, owner of ISPW Wrestling. I said, hey, I need this King Kong Bundy. I sold it years ago, the LJN, the figure. He, of course, had it in the store. I wanted to,
Yep.
a while back, I wanted this program of Hulk Hogan. He had one. It was one of his first title defenses. It was from Philly, and he had the program. So, I mean, anything and everything wrestling. So I got to pump him up a little bit because he said at the interview,
100.
I got to
Yeah,
pump him up a little bit too. Yeah. Thank you, Tommy.
100%. Tommy, thank you for connecting me to you. Thank you, Tommy, for bringing the Last Match Pro Wrestling Rock musical together. And if you want to go and anything that you need in the pro wrestling world, whether it be books, comics, magazines, figures, belts, he will find it for you. Go to the Wrestling Collector in Stockholm, New Jersey. He's the nicest guy. He'll make it happen for you. And again, lifelong wrestling fans. He'd even stand there and talk wrestling for as long as you let him. And don't miss a chance to go see ISPW shows. They're incredible shows. Bull James, who is one of our trainers, is the current champion. We're very proud of him right now, and we're excited to see where he goes as the champion of ISPW wrestling. So don't miss a chance to come out and see an ISPW show and visit the Wrestling Collector, man. It's an awesome place to go.
Before we let you go, is there anywhere where people can find you on social media and otherwise?
Sure. I mean, check out my social media is actor Jeremiah James, and you can learn about me as a performer, as a producer. But really for me, it's not about me; it's about the show. Check out my writing team. The people that built this show are incredible talents, and check out the music on anywhere you can stream a music album. We've got a concept album. We have a new single that's going to be coming out before the holiday season, pre-unreleased song. And tell us what you think of the material, and we hope to see you there.
All right, awesome stuff. Of course, the last match, Pro Wrestling Rock musical. Get out there and see it at the White Eagle Hall. And really, I mean, go to the website, the last match. I mean, great stuff. Awesome idea. Love it, Jeremiah. But thank you so much for all the time.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me and letting us talk about the show. Grateful for the time and hope to see you there.
All right. Thank you. Have a great one.
You too, man. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.